Hello to everyone joining us today. Welcome to our webinar. I'm Asa Waldstein, and I'm the founder and host of this regulatory education series. I'm also the owner of a regulatory consulting company called Supplement Advisory Group. And so we're here today to talk about one of my favorite subjects, label and marketing claims. So we'll be reviewing this from a legal, scientific, regulatory, and practical point of view. So it's going to be a lot of fun, and I'm so happy you're here joining us for this important talk today. Quick little bit of housekeeping. The event is being recorded, and a download link will be sent to all who sign up. And also a quick legal disclaimer. The views expressed by myself and our panelists are our opinions only and do not constitute any legal or regulatory advice. So for our schedule today, we're going to have a panel discussion and open talk for around 35-40 minutes, and then we're going to open it up to Q&A. We do, however, invite you to send questions at any time, and you could do that through the Q&A tab on the top or bottom of your screen. Excuse me, and a big thank you to everyone who submitted pre-webinar questions. I have shared those with the panelists. So putting on these events is a lot of work. I call it a labor of regulatory love. But this amount of work is made easier by Haley Chitty, communication specialist. You may know Haley formerly with APA, who's providing administrative help today. So thank you again, Haley. I really appreciate it, my friend. He will be dropping in detailed panelist bios in your chat box, which will allow you to get to know us and our companies better. And with that, let's get to the fun part and allow me to introduce our panelists. It's my great honor, and I'm paid heavily to say that, no, I'm just kidding. It's my great honor to welcome Dr. Douglas Kallman, VP of Scientific Affairs from Nutrisource and a professor at Nova Southeastern University, and Erica W. Stump, owner of her own amazing law firm. Welcome, Erica and Doug. All right.
Thank you.
Perfect. Yeah, it's great to see everyone. Great to see you, Doug and Erica. Thanks so much for being here. And I see we have a lot of people still joining. Thank you for taking time out of your day to join us. We're going to have a wonderful talk today. So let's start with something easy and not contentious. How about made in the USA and all natural claims? Why don't we start with you, please, Erica? What are the risks associated with making a made in the USA and all natural claim? And what are the requirements for making these claims, please?
Well, let me start with the requirements for the made in the USA claim first. With regard to dietary supplements and foods, you don't have to. There's no country of origin requirement, whereas textiles and some other products, you have to disclose the country of origin. But for obvious reasons, a lot of companies would like to be able to say made in the USA. And in order to do that, the product has to be all or virtually all made in the USA. It has to be manufactured in the United States. The final assembly or processing must have taken place in the United States. And if there is any foreign content in there or foreign ingredients, it must be negligible. It has to be a very small percent. I read somewhere that 10% was too high. So, what does this mean for dietary supplements and conventional foods or products that contain CBD? Well, let's back up. Let's just talk about dietary supplements, because we all know most of the ingredients are sourced outside of the United States. So most of those ingredients are sourced from China. So that would not really be an option for most dietary supplement products. You can, however, say manufactured or assembled in the USA. That would mitigate risk a little bit. So if you are actually manufacturing the product here or assembling it, I think manufacturing makes more sense. You can actually put that claim on your product. But again, you can make other qualified claims like a 60% US content, or it could say made in the USA of US and imported ingredients, packaged in the USA. Obviously, you want to stick with what's accurate, and that's what's important. In terms of risk, there's a lot of people that would take interest in this, right? The FTC is the governing body of this that could come and file an action against you and charge you, and you could have to pay a civil penalty. I just read that some glue maker was ordered to pay $1.2 million for violating a previous settlement with the FTC. U.S. Customs and Border Protection governs the country of origins claims. State attorney generals could come after you. For instance, California, the standard in California is actually stricter than the federal standard. So the standard in California, I can read this to you here. And that prohibits unqualified made in the USA claims, quote, when the merchandise or any article, unit, or part thereof has been entirely or substantially made, manufactured, or produced outside of the United States. And that's been interpreted very, very narrowly. So you'd have to think about that even if you wanted to put a made in the USA or manufactured in the USA claim, you know, you have to think about California, because I think that's the largest state in terms of sales. So undoubtedly your products are going into California. You have to contend with false advertising claims by competitors under the Lanham Act. You'd have to contend with class action lawsuits. I read a couple of lawsuits, one that was filed against Rockstar because taurine, guarana seed, and milk thistle extract were not apparently sourced in the US, right? They probably came from China. That case was dismissed, and I am going to guess the parties settled it because they had leave to amend and they didn't amend to try to fix it. And the final kind of bucket of people that could come after you is competitors or the National Advertising Division at the National Advertising Division, the NAD. So there's a bunch of risks inherent in making a false or misleading made in the USA claim.
Yeah, that is scary. And I'm glad you mentioned kind of risk mitigators such as, you know, packaged in the USA or something that seems maybe potentially a little lighter. There's obviously the very wordy examples, you know, made in the USA from domestic or foreign ingredients, or made with a certain percentage of USA ingredients. That's wonderful. And I also like to point out that companies are responsible not just for what's on their label, because label has taken a broader term in the, you know, in the digital era. They're responsible for claims anywhere on their marketing. So oftentimes you don't see the made in the USA in the label, but it'll be on the product sheet. That's kind of the well-intentioned social media managers like to put as many seals as they can. So you're definitely responsible for that. Doug, what is your thoughts on made in the USA and all natural? Do you have experience of that with your business?
Well, the one thing that I wanted to offer in that is sort of an extension. And I've seen a lot of this on products that are marketed and sold through Amazon, where the Amazon page will say made in the USA and have all of the bells and whistles of being a patriotic type of company and product, but that it's not actually what's, you know, so that's a form of advertising and marketing that people need to be aware of. Just because Amazon might be one of your resellers, you're still responsible for what you put on there. And that is part that gets overlooked because it may not be on the actual packaging that is shipped to the person's house, but the marketing materials via Amazon, as the example I've seen, have some of these claims that are being discussed here.
That's a really good point. I'm glad you pointed that out, Doug. I like to call Amazon the unholy grail of claims. I mean, even in the past, a year ago, you never saw any going over to FDA or FTC enforcement. You never saw any warning letters citing Amazon claims. So
no, but one of the things that we are seeing with Amazon is, and I don't know the origination of this, is but a greater demand of certificates of analysis, of product identity, and better qualifications of products that companies are looking to sell, both in the US and separately. Canadian Amazon actually has a couple of more regulations that are in place that if you want to sell your product in Canada, quick ad, that's something Nutrisource can help you with on a regulatory side, is that there are special or there are considerations that are not typical in America that you have to file in Canada to get that product there under just to be on the Amazon page.
Wow, that's amazing. Sounds like they're kind of maturing and setting some standards, which I think is all really, I hope so, which is good for the industry. I did see that Haley just dropped a link into an article by one of my favorite regulatory writers, Josh Long. He wrote an article the other day about Zarbee's Natural that got in trouble for using natural in the name. That was really wonderful. I know Haley's also dropping a link to my favorite podcast, which is NutriCast. I'm not paid to say this, but I'm just so passionate. I love Danielle Masterson's podcast. NutriCast is one of my favorites. I like to call her the Terry Gross of nutraceuticals. That's how good she is. And she did a wonderful interview on Made in the USA. And then Doug, as we're preparing for this event, you turned me on to Tina, Truth in Advertising. This is now my favorite website. Oh my God. So we'll be dropping in a link to that as well. It helps keep you up to date on FTC-oriented actions, such as companies getting in trouble with Made in the USA or all natural claims, and also companies using false celebrity endorsements. So there was one that I was reading the other day. A CBD company was saying that Tom Hanks was their spokesman, and he didn't like that very much. So he sued back. And so I found that on Tina. And then last comment on truthinadvertising.org is the wall of shame. It's my favorite part of Tina. You can find people like Jim Baker, just to name a few. Don't want to get too contentious here, but check out the wall of shame for Tina. Before we move on, Erica, anything else to add on the all natural or Made in the USA, or should we just jump on?
A couple of comments. So on the Made in the USA, I did confirm we had this discussion about whether the use of a flag or other indicia would constitute a claim, and it does. I read that. I think it was on the FTC's guidance. So and they even referred to maps. Like if you put a map of the United States, that would be an implied Made in the USA claim. So, flags, maps, anything that designates, USA is going to be an implied claim that your product is all or virtually all made in the United States. So to stay away from that. The all natural claims, this is tough because there's a lot of litigation regarding natural, right? There's just endless litigation. And where this gets expensive is these class action cases, right? Like especially in California is where most of these are brought under the CLRA. And the FDA, there is no formal definition of natural, right? Like the FDA said, no, we're not going to give you a definition. They've defined natural flavors, but they will not give a definition for natural. And the same goes with the FTC. The informal guidance offered by the FDA states that its view of natural is meaning that, quote, nothing artificial or synthetic has been included in or has been added to a food that would not normally be expected to be in the food. So then they went on to talk about things like synthetic chemical preservatives like sodium benzoate and potassium sorbate. And I welcome your thoughts about those. I mean, I would believe that those would be not natural, right?
Nope, not natural in my opinion. I was reviewing a label for a client just a week or two ago, and they were making a natural statement in some of their secondary, tertiary marketing. And I said, you've got potassium sorbate and sodium benzoate on there. That's not natural. And then it also is a vitamin C product, which, ascorbic acid is more natural form than natural. So yeah, it's really interesting. And I'm glad you brought up the point. And I'm glad you brought up the point, Erica, on the USA flag on the label. This is going to humble me a little bit, but I was at a conference in 2014 or something. We're talking about Made in the USA. And I was kind of nervous on my back, just top tier regulators raised my hand and said, so am I allowed to put a USA flag on my label if I don't say Made in the USA? And the whole room burst into laughter, thinking I was telling a joke. I wasn't. So now from then on, I always remember that. And I'm really glad you pointed that out to avoid other people embarrassing themselves. Thank you for that. So I think we'll move on and talk about other types of claims.
Asa? Yeah. Could I just say one more thing about mitigating risk in natural, because I've actually helped clients work through this before. So I had a client that had all natural on their product, and it was not all natural. It had, I think, sucralose in it. So one of the things we talked about doing was contains natural ingredients, which wouldn't work for that case, but no artificial ingredients if appropriate, right? There are ways to try to convey the same message and still be truthful. So, yeah. There's certainly ways that you can convey a message that you want to convey and still be truthful. And I think in the Zarbee's case, the NAD had recommended that, the brand name wasn't necessarily a problem if they were able to convey what ingredients weren't natural, right? Like they just needed to modify some of the claims and statements in their marketing, right? Because that was what mainly the problem was in that NAD decision. And they talked about too, like with the exception of melatonin, because apparently you can't get a natural source of that. So you're allowed to continue to say natural on your label if you have melatonin in there, which I thought was interesting because I wasn't aware of that exception to that rule. That's all I have on natural.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you. And that's why we have the expert legal opinion, or not legal opinion, legal comment on everything, because I would never have thought about that and looked at from your unique legal perspective. So thank you for that expertise, Erica. So I think we'll move on to some other claims, and why don't we start with you, please, Doug? Claims is kind of a catch-all type of word. Can you give us an overview of different types of claims, such as structure, function, and perhaps provide some examples, please?
I will attempt to do so. So one of the things that we ought to understand is that under the Food and Drug Administration, there are different types of claims or claim sets, and these are categories. And the ones that I'm mentioning now may not be all inclusive. There might be more. But an example would be there are qualified health claims. There are nutrient content claims. There are structure function claims, and this is where most dietary supplements put their emphasis, if you will, on structure function. And there are a few other types of claims that are allowed. Focusing in on structure function is essentially when you would like to make a claim about how the ingredient or product affects a structure or a function of a human being. And one example would be, and I'll use a sporting example, if you will, that if we were looking at a dietary supplement that is purported, believed to be, thought that it would enhance speed, then you would be and a study demonstrated that those people that took the product as compared to placebo in a well-defined manner and all of the things that go along with that, statistically significant and effect size meaningful change for improving somebody's speed, then the claim that would be associated with that for structure function would be something along the lines of, I'm paraphrasing, helps you get faster, get there quicker, enables an athlete to become faster. And the structure function has to do, again, with how the intervention affects the end function. Function there being muscle function, muscle turnover, running speed, and so forth. So structure function claims, vitamin C helps support a healthy immune system. That's the structure of vitamin C and the function of it in the body, or one of the functions as an example. This is the area where most companies, when they want to invest in a proof of concept or a full randomized double-blind placebo-controlled type of trial or a comparative trial, will look to make sure that scientifically the objectives of the study are designed in such a way that they could be then translated over into usually structure function claims. Hope that's helpful.
That's wonderful. I think we'll stay on structure function for a little bit. So, Doug, what was really needed? What type of research is needed to make, for example, structure function claims? And is that something that Nutrisource, your company, can help us with? Can you kind of walk us through or give us a high level of that process?
Sure. Yes, Nutrisource is a contract research and service organization, a global company that has regulatory expertise, clinical trial services, and other analytical and bioanalytical and certification services in the different regulated markets of the globe. So, for example, we're in the US right now. We have expert regulatory for FDA and FTC and other matters, as well as for clinical trials. We have about 300 sites in the US that we work with. Now, an example would be, is if I'd rather take us back a second. And when you would like to make a claim and you want to use original science, meaning that science research that's done on your product or ingredient, if it's a finished ingredient or a finished multi-ingredient product, it's best to take a stepwise approach. If you don't know anything at first, or all you have is preclinical animal-related data, you do a small proof of concept study in humans, 8 to 12 people, looking to see if you move the needle, so to speak, signals on any of the outcome markers of interest. From there, you go to a more robust randomized double-blind study, and that's where the greater substantiation can come from for structure function claims in the randomized double-blind study. But the proof of concept study that we recommend some people start off with is that so that you could learn about does the product work like you think it does in a human. What are some of the effects that are being observed, and it helps you fine tune along with getting the proper sample size for the randomized double-blind study. This is the more pivotal trial for claims. Now, under the United States government, Supreme Courts, appeal courts, and courts that Erica can explain to us, there have been different rulings as to what constitutes substantiation, where the Federal Trade Commission used to say from 1994 onward until recent years, Mary Engel, first in 1994, claimed this, is that you needed 2 randomized double-blind studies in order to have a claim that would be substantiated. Then it became 1 randomized double-blind study. And then another court ruled in a Federal Trade Commission case versus Bayer that maybe you didn't even actually need a randomized double-blind study, but if there was experts in other areas to support a claim, then the study wouldn't be needed. We would tell you that the best armament, if you will, the best strength behind a claim is when you actually have a study on your finished product, because that's in a way that gives you, nobody can ask you questions as much as if it's on an ingredient and you're borrowing science from prior published science, or you're just using things along those lines.
That's wonderful. Thank you for that. That's great. And I think that was a perfect segue into discussing individual ingredient benefits. I know and I think many people on our webinar today are often asked what are the rules? What should we think about when discussing individual ingredient benefits? Now, there was a very recent ruling by the Ninth Circuit regarding ingredient structure function claims. Erica, can you give us an overview of this ruling, please, and talk about what we can learn here when discussing ingredient benefits?
So this is the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. They recently affirmed the district court's decision to dismiss a class action case that was brought under California Legal Remedies Act. The class action plaintiff in that case was asserting that the product's labels were misleading, arguing that biotin didn't help him and that biotin does not benefit most people. Target had made various structure function claims that biotin can, quote, promote healthy hair and skin. The court found that these were appropriate structure function claims and that they were supported by competent and reliable scientific information, and dismissed the class action. So I feel like this is a big, win for the industry, and that, now the Ninth Circuit is out there saying that these are valid, structure function claims, and they have been substantiated by competent and reliable scientific evidence. It doesn't matter that it didn't work on this one person. Structure function is the product's health impact on the human body, right? It doesn't have to be his human body. It didn't work for him. It's not what the standard is. That's not what the law is. So I thought that was a really good case. And to piggyback on what Doug was saying about the randomized clinical trials, I agree. I think it's best practice to have, an RCT, the gold standard, a double-blinded, placebo-controlled clinical trial on the finished products as opposed to the ingredients. And that is certainly what the FTC would like to see, right? They have entered into various consent decrees. And as Doug mentioned, they've kind of been all over the place, but that's what they want is, these RCTs. That being said, Doug could tell you this too, they're costly. Most companies can't afford to do RCTs on the finished product. So they rely on studies of the individual ingredients, which is not ideal, but the FTC says that's okay. So I'd like to read the definition from the FTC's guide about competent and reliable scientific evidence, because it doesn't mention RCTs necessarily. Well, it says studies, but there's other evidence. So they call it evidence consisting of tests, analysis, research, or studies that have been conducted and evaluated in an objective manner or by qualified persons and are generally accepted in the profession to yield accurate and reliable results that is sufficient in quality and quantity based on standards accepted in the relevant scientific fields when considered in light of the entire body of relevant and reliable scientific evidence to substantiate that the representation is true. And I looked at a recent 11th Circuit case on this too, and it reiterated what, that the FTC's desire that people have two RCTs is not the law, right? That's not what the guide said. That's not what was intended by the act. And none of that is what it is. It's, it's not a formula, right? It's not two RCTs. It's not one, some other, whatever research that you have to support your claim. It varies with product to product. And in some of the stuff I was reading yesterday, I looked at a case, an NAD case brought against Maddie's cough products by Zarbee's. And the NAD determined that the advertiser provided a reasonable basis for the soothing effect of honey on coughs, but recommended that the advertiser modify the claim to indicate that the claimed effect was attributable to the ingredient honey and not the product itself. So for me, my advice would be get one or two RCTs. And if you can't afford to do that, make your claims more accurate to convey that this is a study on an ingredient, not on the finished product, because so much advertising copy comes across my desk, and the way it reads, and I know that's not the case, but the way it reads to me and probably to a reasonable consumer is that this is a test, a clinical trial on the finished product. They don't see that it's only on vitamin C. So I would say that's important to make your advertising truthful and not misleading.
One thing I would like to add to what you're saying, Erica, is that if you're a startup company and you don't have money, and yes, studies can cost some money. I don't necessarily agree that they're expensive, but maybe that's a different purview. More expensive is when a class action suit or the FTC comes after you, and now you're spending $50,000 to $75,000 a month on lawyer fees, in addition to what you were spending on advertising, and then and still nothing's resolved, and it takes time. So one of the things I would like to tell people is, if for some reason you're going to market and you don't have a finished product study and you're relying upon borrowed science or earlier science on those ingredients, still work with an attorney, still work with the regulatory agency to vet those claims to make sure that they're within the framework that they should be. And then think about, from a business strategy, then taking some of the proceeds that you have coming in from sales of those products and earmark it for product specific trials shortly down your road in your business plan. And then second to that, work with a really good accountant or accounting firm that understands the IRS tax codes that are utilized or can be utilized by dietary supplement companies, including ingredient companies. And the reasons why is that there are what's called research and development, R&D tax credits that are available that can be utilized by companies for everything from aspects of salary in your company to the acquisition of equipment, to changing out and reformulating a test kitchen, to contract clinical trials, where you can get up to, I think it's 65 or 75 cents back on the dollar, for true R&D. Again, under, I believe it's tax codes 41 and 174, but there are good accounting firms that can help you model what the big food companies do. As an example, the Nestle's, the Kellogg's, and what the pharmaceutical industry does, as ways of offsetting costs and reinvesting in themselves to develop this aspect. One other quick thing before we jump off this topic is, one of the beautiful things about preclinical studies and human clinical studies is sometimes that you can get or obtain information in those studies that are useful towards filing provisional patents or full patents, because the information was novel, unique, unexpected, and so forth, and can lead you down a road of getting added IP for your product, which ultimately increases the valuation of your company and brand when other companies are looking at you.
That's amazing, Doug. Thanks for sharing that. I had absolutely no idea. And I'm sure there's maybe a few people out there attending, if not numerous amount of people, that didn't know that. I mean, when I've just grinned and bared it and done studies and, worked with universities and put R&D rooms together with just capital expense. So I never even knew that you could potentially get some tax benefits there. So that's fabulous. I want to just stay on ingredient individual ingredient benefits for another quick moment. There's lots of great branded ingredients out there that might have wonderful clinical trials on their ingredient. If someone is formulating with those branded ingredients, what can they say? What can they say about that? And what should they be careful of when, talking about the branded ingredient and its benefits?
Yeah, that's a good question. And that comes across my desk quite often. A lot of my clients, startups, they want to use branded ingredients because of the research that they've already done on the ingredient, just to be able to make the structure function claims. But my recommendation is still to hire a scientist to vet those claims, because just because they're telling you can make them doesn't mean you can make them. And it's funny because I came across an ingredient. It's a branded ingredient, but a lot of people like to use a generic ingredient. I'm not going to say what it is, but it said, 50 randomized clinical trials to support all of this research that we've done. That's why you should buy our branded ingredient X instead of the generic Y. And I had to laugh because that, I don't know, 50, it just seemed kind of much, but there's certainly benefit to that, right? Like, you'd want to be able to take advantage of making those structure function claims. But I think the problem is brands, especially new people in the industry, think, okay, well, if they said it, it's got to be true and I can rely on it. Whereas I'm like, no, we need to vet it, research it, double check it. And what I usually suggest is that, like, on their website, they include a link to the study. I think a question popped up along those lines. I think that it's belt and suspenders. It conveys that the research was done on the ingredient and not on the product, right? And it just provides more information, and it's more transparent, I think.
I love that. Thank you. That's wonderful. And make the warning clear. This is not researched on finished products, disclaimer, or something like that. Seems like that may add another layer of protection. Now, if it's okay, Doug, I want to jump over and get to some of this fun stuff, such as, is there a definition for substantiation or clinically proven? Maybe we could just, touch on that if you don't mind.
Sure. Let's start with the latter. Is there a definition for clinically proven? And the answer is not currently that I am aware of. And where that definition would come from would be legal, fortunately or unfortunately, no offense to Eric or any other lawyer on this, would come from the courts. So if it doesn't come from the courts, then you have to go with the consensus understanding of a definition of proven and clinically proven, because that's an implied claim that this ingredient or product, wherever you're seeing clinically proven, or is a direct claim rather, that this has been proven to work and proven to do whatever we say it does, grow your hair, skin, or nails, something that didn't work for me. So I think that the clinically proven is one where companies, if they want to use that, need their in-house counsel or contract lawyers and scientists to feel more than comfortable enough that they could substantiate that they have more than enough evidence for making the claim, and therefore that claim is proven. Now, what is more than enough evidence? Is it preponderance, meaning 51% of all studies or more? I don't know. But clinically proven is sort of like the word natural. It doesn't have a federal definition yet, but we know you're implying directly that this works. So you have to have the substantiation for that. And it's kind of different than having a claim like time-tested ingredients. What does that mean? Those things are a little bit amorphous. Erica?
I was just going to say, I agree. The FTC has not provided or approved any definition of any of these: clinically proven, clinically studied, clinically shown, clinically tested. But from everything I've read, it's deemed to be an establishment claim, so that there is a heightened level of substantiation that you need, to your point, right? Like, it's a higher level than just a regular structure function claim, because you are making an express claim that something happened in a clinical setting that either proved something or showed something. And I read a few of these definitions online. I'm not sure that a court would agree with them, but clinically proven means sufficient scientific studies being more than one controlled study. Clinically shown means one study. Clinically tested just means an ingredient or a component was tested. Again, I'm not sure a court would necessarily adopt those definitions, but clinically proven seems to be the strongest in terms of what you say, with clinically tested to be the weakest and in need of the least amount of substantiation in terms of what you need. But it's definitely something to be careful about. When I was looking at this yesterday, I saw a diet pill and it says clinically proven on it. And, you know, there's all this litigation back and forth and fighting about it. And to me, that means, okay, I'm going to lose weight. I take these products. There have been many studies that show that that these people lost weight, and I will lose weight if I take this product. That's what it means to me. So
if you're going to make that claim, make sure that you and your inside counsel or outside counsel and science group keep marketing in check to make sure that you have that kind of substantiation.
I think
I love it.
US Activia was the largest ever lawsuit for false advertising of a food product. It was $35 million. And they had said their product Activia is clinically proven to help regulate your digestive system in 2 weeks if eaten every day, which apparently wasn't the case because they revised it to say it will help to regulate your digestive system if you take it for 2 weeks and also participate in a healthy lifestyle.
Right, and that came from you know, the Jamie Lee Curtis commercials for, if you remember, for that Dannon Activia, and look, $35 million for not having substantiation, essentially for the claim. That's a lot of money, which may potentially have been preventable. If the studies that they were using, which I haven't read them, so I'm not really well vested in that area, were on the finished product, and there was more than enough of them that actually substantiated the claim. The fact that they had to modify the claim meant that there was weaknesses found within how they sewed together their science for the claim, and that is one of the good reasons to have you know, sort of a system where you can have scientists and legal work together to make sure that everything that you have planned won't give you unexpected headaches.
I agree. To the extent my clients can afford it, I always try to bring on a regulatory compliance scientist expert to be able to analyze the studies and the marketing materials from a science standpoint versus, you know, the legal standpoint. Is this the right font, and so on and so forth.
I love that. That's wonderful. Great discussion. Let's jump on and talk about nutrient content claims. We can just spend a quick minute here. I know we talked about this on the onsite. Nutrient content claims such as high potency, good source, high in, even healthy. These all have pretty clear definitions. Well, I don't know about healthy, but the other ones have pretty clear definitions you can find on the FDA website. And I also wanted to point out, be careful of free of claims. It's pretty common in THC free in the hemp product world, but you see free of claims misused quite a bit.
Yeah, I'm sorry, just to interject, the free of or the free claim when it comes to nutrient content is more of the things, if you go back to cholesterol free that you used to see on bread, and then you would wonder, well, did bread ever really have cholesterol put in it? But that's neither here nor there. But that's where we would see, because a nutrient content claim is more describing the level of a nutrient in a product. So the terms free, high, and low, they have specific legal definitions about the quantity and things along those lines. But it has to be qualified, and that's the point that you're in part making here.
Perfect. I like that. So let's move on, and thank you for that, Doug. And Erica and Doug, this has been a great discussion so far, and time flies. Next time we should set a 5-hour webinar. Just kidding. No, we're packing a lot into an hour, and we've got lots and lots of attendees here still hanging with us. So thank you again. It's great to have everyone here for this discussion. Let's move on to Prop 65. You know, it's always kind of a contentious issue, but I know Erica, we talked about just touching on some high level areas of Prop 65. What are some areas that the consumer should be aware of just from a very high level?
Well, you know, there are 4 or so ingredients that tend to make their way into finished dietary supplement products: lead, cadmium, arsenic, and what's the 4th one? At any rate,
Mercury.
Mercury, thank you. I find that a lot of I represent a lot of foreign supplement companies that are starting a presence in the US, or just baby startups that don't have any experience in the industry, who have never heard of Prop 65. And, you know, I represent a myriad of different folks, right? I represent contract manufacturers, I represent brands, I represent scientists. I am fully encompassed in the supplement and food industry. And I would like to see, you know, some contract manufacturers offering to do the heavy metal testing, or at least telling some of these companies about Prop 65, because these companies are out there selling these products and they're not getting their products tested for the heavy metals. and it makes its way in California. And then all of a sudden they get, a letter from the Environmental Research Center who bought the products online, and the lead levels are in excess of what California allows. And you're looking at a $2,500 fine per day per violation. That gets expensive quickly. Plus you're going to wind up paying lawyers. So I feel like it's just a lot of it isn't out there. The other thing I would say is this. So if you have less than 10 employees, you're exempt, right? But if you sell through a company that sells to gyms and health care and health centers, or if you sell directly to gyms, or if you sell through Amazon, they're going to require you as the brand that's exempt under Prop 65 to indemnify Amazon or Europa or GNC or whoever it is that you're selling through. You're going to indemnify them for any damages they incur, have to pay because of your non-compliance with Prop 65. So that's kind of something that's tricky in there, because while you might think you're flying under the radar, your retailers are not. And these bounty hunters, is what I call them, are savvy to that. And they will go after anyone who's got money, anyone that they can get. And then you're going to wind up paying, Amazon or GNC or whomever for the Prop 65 issue. So the second piece of this, and I had never seen this before, one of my contract manufacturers recently got a Prop 65 notice. And contractually, they had disclaimed all warranties. Prop 65 compliance was on the brand, and this still made its way into this guy's lap. So, these bounty hunters are getting desperate. They're getting creative. They want money. There's already been CBD bounty hunter letters going out, as I understand. And the way to comply, right, is to put the warning on your product. And if you sell online, the warning also has to be on the product page, or it has to be a warning on the product page that you can click on, or you can have a pop-up at checkout if the person resides in California. But if you sell online, you have to comply two ways. You have to comply with the warning on the product, and you have to comply with something on the website. So, there's ways to comply, and it's certainly something that brands need to be aware of, I'd say, because it's costly to not be aware of it if you get one of those letters.
Yeah, it sure is. My silly joke I like to say is I had a lot more hair on my head before I got a 60-day notice. It happens, so it's best to avoid it. Thank you for discussing the comments on disclosures online and on product. And I know Haley dropped in some wonderful guidance from APA, Prop 65 labeling guidance, which is superb. I know there were a lot of questions that came in regarding short form warnings, and that's all included in the APA guidance. And also a webinar that I did on hemp products and Prop 65, which is applicable for dietary supplement. That link went in as well. So, okay, I think it's time for the Q&A section of our event. And I've seen a lot of great questions come in. Haley, we'll turn it over to you for a Q&A, please.
Sounds good. In terms of made in the USA claims, we had a couple questions asking if bottles and labels also had to be made in the USA.
You want me to answer that? I looked at that not long ago, and my conclusion was they did not have to. The question I was looking at, though, was whether it had to be marked made in China, because the bottle was coming from China. So I'd say that if the bottle came from China, that they couldn't say made in the USA or came from somewhere else, because that's a big piece of the packaging, right?
All right. And is there any liability for retailers carrying products with labeling issues? For example, something as a product that says made in the USA. Is there any liability for the retailer?
Yeah, I can answer that, certainly. So I don't want to say it's exactly the same level of liability, but essentially it is. If you're the one with the consumer interface and you're selling to the consumer, you're responsible. Like, they could come after you for false advertising as well. What usually happens in those instances is they pull everyone into the lawsuit, right? They pull in the brand, they pull in the retailer, sometimes a contract manufacturer, the ingredient supplier, depending on what the issue is. I mean, they just pull everybody in, and there's various forms of liability. And the best thing you can do if you're the retailer or the brand or whoever you are is to have a clear contract that sets forth who's liable for the claims, right? Like, if the brand made in the USA claim, who should be responsible? The brand or the contract manufacturer? They're the ones sourcing the ingredients and the materials. But that's a business decision that you make when you enter into an arrangement with a contract manufacturer or a retailer. But any of the big retailers are going to put all of that on the brand and in an indemnification agreement, an indemnification language.
Well, one of the things I wanted to mention in that is if you look in the Dietary Supplement Health Education Act, the DSHEA Act, the implication there, along with the Federal Trade Commission guide for advertising for the dietary supplement industry, is that everybody sort of in the supply chain of the product is responsible for almost everything. So if you're a company that uses a contract manufacturer, you're still responsible to make sure that they're following GMPs. And then if you're a mom and pop store that is putting up your own and advertising rather a product and selling it, you're in that supply chain to the consumer. So in theory, you're still responsible for the advertising that the company is making if you put it up in your store and so forth. I've never seen it really tested to that nth level that everybody, but the spirit of the DSHEA and FTC description of that is everybody in that supply chain has a responsibility. So the companies that put, legally it's on you, legally it's on us, that also could potentially be something that gets fraught for cross talk between those companies should there ever actually be a legal issue.
And one more question on this issue. There's a couple questions about saying things like crafted in the USA or assembled in the USA. So if you could just spend a minute maybe addressing those alternatives.
I would say assembled is like manufactured in the USA. Crafted, I mean, I prefer assembled or manufactured over crafted. I'm not really sure what crafted means. We know what manufactured means. We know what assembled means. And I'm assuming we're talking about ingredients that are not from the US, right? We're just trying to get a US qualified claim in there. So yeah. I don't know what crafted means necessarily. I think
how about formulated in the USA instead of saying crafted? That would be a little safer, I believe.
That would fall more under puffery, if you ask me. But I'm not a legal person, I'm a scientist, but formulated is the person that has the idea, or then the formulation scientist that actually takes that cake recipe and sees if all the ingredients will play well in a capsule, a tablet, or whatever the delivery system is. I think that's, kind of different than that product claim. I've always wondered about something that was along the lines of international ingredients manufactured in the US. So global ingredients, US made is like what happens when we see those starting to converge?
You can make those. You can say, manufactured in the US of US and international ingredients, or manufactured in the US with international ingredients or global ingredients.
So there are options for companies out there to still be proud of the US and use it in their marketing. As long as you're truthful.
All right, I think we can switch tracks here. Another question, what are the risks of using terms like simple ingredients, real food ingredients? Any comments on that?
I'm happy to start off on that because there have been some cases that I'm aware of. So specifically, with made with real food ingredients, where you actually, so if you're going to take a dehydrated blueberry and that's actually what you're going to put in your powdered protein, then yes, that would be truthful. But if you're using a food science method of making synthetic blueberry taste with blueberry specks in a shake, that would not be truthful. So this still falls under that. It has to have a basis in truth for the specific words being used. Things like simple ingredients. Let's say, just to use a global one, there's one of the bars that are on market that I think that are known for either just having 4 ingredients or 6 ingredients and they're listed. That's fine. That's transparent and that's simple. That's, again, probably falls more under puffery than it does something else for like a simple. But real food must actually have real food, not synthetic derivatives that taste like a blueberry. Right, Erica?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I mean, the key is to be truthful and not misleading. I would say simple, there's probably no legal definition of that, but real foods, there's certainly a legal definition. There's a way to define that. So you need to be very careful with, real foods.
Some of the cereal companies that make kids-oriented cereals, and I guess what adults also sometimes eat, have actually had FTC and other court case issues related to claims that are just like these being made. So it is a serious area that you have to have a basis for making that claim.
Great. A couple questions here about clinically proven. So if you guys can comment a bit more on that in terms of utilizing research studies, and then clinically studied versus clinically proven. So any additional comments there?
I'll just start off, if that's all right, Erica. Just from some of my experience, not specifically with Nutrisource, but globally speaking, the clinically studied has two issues. One, it's either going to be considered a direct or implied claim that, yes, this product itself has been studied, not necessarily individual ingredients, but all of the ingredients together. And that maybe you're implying that clinically studied, meaning, hey, this works. So you actually have to have, the data to support it. I worked on a court case where a similar term to clinically studied was used. And we submitted to the courts in California that was truthful and not misleading, because there was more than 3 studies for that specific product, and on that specific, and they were clinical studies registered in clinicaltrials.gov with published data. So you have to have, again, truth in that area. The clinically proven we discussed earlier, and that's a higher mountain, but that does involve having studies, and more than just studies, probably to make the proven claim.
Yeah, I agree with what Doug said. I think the clinically proven that we talked about before is the highest level of these clinically claims, and you need to have, more than one study and other evidence to support what you're saying.
All right, I thought this was an interesting question. Is there a database or list or resource for structure function claims that have already been substantiated by ingredient?
Not that I'm aware of.
Well, maybe I'm having a little bit of a different way of thinking about this. But if somebody were to really spend a lot of time and dig through the FDA 75-day pre-market notifications, if I understand correctly, companies are supposed to notify the FDA when they're going to be making claims on a product. And if you then go through either a Freedom of Information Act or just a simple FDA search of these pre-market notifications, you may get an inkling on the ones that the FDA had further follow-up on, and ones that the FDA did not. There's not a central database besides looking through a combination of FDA submissions, what did they object to and what didn't they, and court cases. That's the only way I could see that if somebody was trying to compile all that together.
Let me just add to that, Doug, that I don't think most brands are filing those notifications with the FDA.
No, they're supposed to, though, and that's a whole nother regulatory talk that ASO will put together. All the things that you're supposed to do, but that you may not know.
Right. I think that a lot of brands don't know.
Yep, so true. Yep, those are really good comments. I would like to, before we move on to our final question, Haley, Doug, Erica, that was fantastic. Thank you. I wanted to quickly plug APA. As you can see, I roll with my APA banner here. For those of you who may not know, APA is the American Herbal Products Association, one of the top trade groups for the dietary supplement and hemp industries. APA is celebrating its 38th anniversary this year. Haley has dropped in lots of educational links and guidance documents from APA. If you're not sure, you don't know about APA, check out appa.org. And if you want to learn more about it, please do contact me. So let's move on to our final question, please. And we'll start with you, Doug. Any final advice or takeaways you want to leave our attendees with today? And please also tell us the best way to learn about the services that your company offers.
But thank you. We offer dreams of exotic vacations in a time far, far away where we're COVID free and happy. Sorry, I was just all day. I was trying to come up with something witty. You know,
We have to wear a mask.
no masks, and everybody with 3D glasses. I don't know, and no calories in any food. What I would like to leave people with is that depending upon where you are in the business, a startup business, one that's has a good money behind you, you're a business that's been established, you're already an international brand, you've recently been acquired by a multinational brand, you know, that it's good to surround yourself with people that can help you in areas that you're not experts in. And when it comes to dietary supplements, just because an ingredient can be sourced doesn't mean that it's a approved regulated ingredient in every business market where you may do business. And that just because somebody else made a claim on something doesn't mean that it's okay. And so I would advocate on the side of, even if you're looking to run lean, engage yourself with knowledge leaders on the science side, the legal side, and yes, on the marketing side. And if you don't know how to find those knowledge leaders, that's what another great service of organizations like APA, because those knowledge leaders are usually known to APA and to other associations like that. So if you have a question, you can always come to www.nutrisource.ca. That's the company I work for, our website. Look on our regulatory services, our clinical trial services, analytical, certification, or bioanalytical, and we'd be happy to answer. But my push to everybody here today is, the sooner you engage services internally or externally, like what Erica offers, what Nutrisource and other research groups offer, whether it's university or a private research group, is the stronger that your company and product and firm will be in being able to move forward without having expensive knocks on your door or mail being received from a federal inquiry on the Federal Trade Commission level, a class action lawsuit, or some other or being kicked off Amazon for not being compliant with their submissions. And then yet that was 60% of your business, and now you have zero business. These things are what come up, and we're here to help you be successful in what you're doing.
Thank you. Over to you, Erica.
Yeah, just to bootstrap on what Doug had said, it's worth the investment on the front end to spend a little bit of money to make sure your labels are compliant, to make sure that, you have the right substantiation for any structure function claims or other claims that you might make, that your product's not, mislabeled. And, here's the funny thing. I've had clients come to me and they haven't received a warning letter. It's like over font size or something like that, but they've run X thousands of labels, right? And then I make all these changes and they're like, but we have to throw all these labels away. I was like, well, you should have come before you ran all of those labels. And then, that would have gotten you away from that. And things like negotiating with contract manufacturers, negotiating with retailers, like trying to make sure the burden is on other people. I mean, I've got a case right now that I'm dealing with a contract manufacturer, and they didn't have a contract in place. Now they're fighting about who owns the formula. And, it's going to cost him a lot of money to hire me to sort this out, when he could have just had a simple agreement on the front end, and it would have cost him a fraction of the price that it's going to cost him now. So I think it's worth the investment on the front end to get legal and, science and regulatory involved on the front end, just to look at some of this stuff before, you have a problem, a warning letter, or a knock at the door, or you're served with a summons and a complaint.
Perfect. And ericawstump.com, I think, is a great way to get to know about you and all your services that you offer. Thank you for that. That was wonderful. So as a quick reminder, I'm hosting an event on FDA inspections. It's with my friend Stephen Yeager from Mountain Rose Herbs. It's on February 12th. It's how to prepare for and conduct oneself during an FDA inspection. It should be a lot of fun. It's called an Ask Me Anything, so you can pepper us with any questions you want. Head over to my website. It's my name, asawaldstein.com, to learn more about this event. Read my regulatory blog, check out my helpful hints videos, past webinar links, and learn more about my new consulting company, Supplement Advisory Group. I'd like to thank you, all of our attendees, for being here today. Thank you so much. Thanks to Haley Chitty for all your great admin support. And a huge thanks to you, Doug and Erica, for sharing your expertise. This has been a lot of fun.
It has. Thank you, Asa. Thank you, Haley.
Thank you, Haley and Asa, and everybody for participating.
Thank you all. And at this point, this does conclude our webinar, and I wish everyone a great day.